Let's go for a walk, buddy. Touch my shoes. Good boy. Such a good boy you are. All right. Paul, fetch my shoe. Go on, fetch my shoe. Good boy. Yeah, such a good boy you are. Are you ready to go for a walk? So am I. Let's go for a walk. Come on. One of the most frequently asked questions revolves around the topic of self-blame. Self-blame comes in many different forms, so we're going to have to attack it from many different angles. But the truth is that as parents, we're so prone to self-blame that as soon as we address one form, it's almost for sure to pop up again in another form. So I think you'll find these angles to be helpful to you at different times. Let's go, baby. This topic is so common that just a few days ago I was talking to a very dear friend of mine and this topic came up, self-blame. The self-blame that he was struggling with was actually a combination of two different types of self-blame. The first was that he had been a horrible father. He'd been in the Navy, subject to frequent deployments. He wasn't home because he was deployed. He wasn't as involved in his child's life as he could have been. And the second form was the if-onlys. If only I had done this. If only I had gotten out of the Navy and bought a farm in Nebraska, far away from everyone else where I could spend more time with my child instead of the big city life, then maybe none of this would have happened. Those two forms are very common together, but we only have time in this video to address the first one. The second one we'll address in the next video. However, what's important to know is that we will get to them. As I said earlier, these attacks come in so many different forms, we have to be versed in both of them. So let's take a look at some of those, shall we? I do have a favor to ask, though, before we get to the topic of the day, and that's this. If you're finding these videos helpful, please like them. If you're finding this channel helpful, please follow us. If you're looking for more information than I can possibly provide in a short video, please refer to the book. And if you have read the book, the first in the series is Hope for Parents with Addicted Loved Ones. If you have read that book, please consider reviewing it. Reviewing a book is the greatest gift that you can give to an author because it raises the book up in visibility across all platforms. So a written review is the greatest gift you can give to an author. But please consider following us or at least liking this video. Now, back to the topic at hand, which is I'm a horrible father, you're a horrible father, you're a horrible mother, a horrible parent, you did bad. Let's take a look at some of that, shall we? In the first book, Hope for Parents with Addicted Loved Ones, we spend several chapters looking at the amount and degree of influence that we might actually have over our children. Yes, obviously we do have some, but it may not be as much as you think it is. Now, as soon as I say that, everyone wants to talk about the hypothetical parent who was horrendously abusive. Yes, there are those parents out there. I used to be a paramedic. You're not going to convince me any different. However, what we know is that those type parents usually don't care about the abuse they inflicted. They're not the parents who are watching YouTube videos or reading books about what went wrong, how can we fix this? You are. You're the parent watching this video. You're the parent reading the books, or else we wouldn't be having this conversation. That means that you're not that parent. You're far more likely to be the average typical parent who did the best they could for their children with the tools and knowledge that they had at the time. In which case, let's talk about how much influence you actually had. So here we are at the top of this little ridge line. This is a good place to draw the illustration about how much control you actually have over your children, how much influence. So let's take a look at that, shall we? What I have to help me illustrate this point is a board for the base to help hold it steady and 100 washers. Each washer is going to represent 1% of the total influence on your child to do drugs and later on to develop an addiction. Later on, because obviously with no drug use, there's no drug addiction. So there's a lot of things that go into the decision to use drugs. It's more than just the influence of the parents. There's media, there's friends, there's peers, there's a legal system, there's all sorts of things that go into it. Most experts, most researchers who have studied addiction conclude that parents are about 30% of the influence. Good or bad, for or against, parents have about 30% of the influence. Right now, we could take a look at that and say 1/3, 2/3. It doesn't make sense to blame the 1/3 and excuse the 2/3. But let's dig a little deeper. Remember, that's everything about being a parent that's 30%. The things we did right and the things we did wrong. The good and the bad. The love, the hug, the playing, the games, all of that stuff, along with whatever offense they may have taken. So, having said that, let's say that instead of 30%, that would mean that you did everything wrong. You did not one thing right. If you did one thing right, you have to take that 1% and put it back here where it belongs. Because if you taught your child to do what's right and they decide to do what's wrong, that's on them. Your job was to teach them. But I'm willing to bet you did more than one thing right. Did you go to a school band practice? Did you go to football practice? Did you watch a game? Did you make sure they ate on time? Did you not sexually abuse them? Okay, so I'm willing to bet you probably did at least 50% right. 50%? You know, I don't even know you, but I imagine you did way more than 50% right. Can we say you did 75% right? I'm willing to bet you probably did more than 75% right too. 3 out of 4 things, I bet you did less things wrong if you were doing the best you could for your child with the tools and knowledge you had at the time. Even an average parent, I would imagine, did way better than 1 out of 4 things wrong or 3 out of 4 things right. But however far you want to take this, it seems pretty silly to blame this little pile here and excuse this great big pile up here, which is where the blame should really be, and that is your child as a free moral agent have the right to make their own decisions about what they will and will not do. You probably did your best for your child as a parent that loves them. Maybe it's time to give yourself a break. Pretty small pile. Go.